Good evening. Our top story tonight, a forum in ruins. Members of the forums at zfrank.com, an online venue referred to by some as Ducky Central or home of the sports racers, report that the forums have been in notable decline throughout 2013, suffering a persistent infestation of undesirable elements. And visitors are cautioned, if they come looking for creative energy or a supportive community, they might not find the forums quite so welcoming as before. We go now to our correspondent, John Jones, on the scene for more of the story.
It was a home like many others. Safe, welcoming, and filled with the laughter and creative energy of the people who lived there. Except this home was bright yellow and wore a beak. It all began in the spring of 2012. A wildly successful Kickstarter campaign announced the start of something new, something exciting, and for some, perhaps a return to what once provided inspiration and an anchor for their sense of community. People were invited to come together and be a part of building something that could entertain, inspire, and challenge them, all built around a web video series entitled, appropriately enough, A Show, described as same, but different. For fans of similar adventures of an earlier era, the invitation was especially tantalizing, and join they did. What they embarked upon would, for many, redefine the playground of virtual communities. And what started as collaborative endeavors in virtual space often grew into tangible expressions of shared creativity in the real world. And so it was for a time. People continued to visit here, many stuck around, and these self-described duckies or sports racers, initially drawn in by experiences of uniquely emotional or creative engagement, felt that they could make a home here. What most did not realize, however, is that by the start of the new year, the home's owner had already moved away. The signs of decline were slow at first. Fading paint or chipped plaster popped up in the guise of discussions about wedding dresses or touting the merits of Ugg boots. These seemed easy to ignore and would not deter the enthusiasm and camaraderie of the duckies. But spam can be even more enthusiastic, and with offers of Marlboro cigarettes, Nike shoes, and RuneScape gold, it threatened to become a blight that would darken the doorway of this home and make it less welcoming to visitors. Let's see if we can get this cleaned up, and what can we do to help? The duckies pleaded in desperation.
How many duckies need to die today? 3? How about, I don't know, 27? How about none? How about none more duckies need to die today?
But their quacks went unanswered, for those who could repair the damage done to this home had already left it long ago. And so the equivalent of cat shit and crack pipes strewn across the floor in the form of a marauding army of spam bots had worn so thin the welcome mat of Ducky Central that it had become clear this forum would never again be the home aspired to in its inaugural ambitions.
Reached for comment, the administration of the forums at zfrank.com responded, "I don't perpetuate things that aren't working just for the sake of perpetuating them." And that is how the Zfrank do, or don't. Up next, the weather. Hi, John here, DV Watt in the forums over at zfrank.com. And if you've watched this far, you've no doubt picked up that this episode of Meet the Sports Racers is essentially a commentary on how those forums are no longer the ambitious and welcoming place they used to be. And in fact, depending upon when you see this video, may not even be there any longer. The forums over at zfrank.com initially functioned as a complement to the web video series A Show, a platform through which the audience had the opportunity to go deeper than the store or the featured projects and missions associated with the show. In these forums, members could explore and engage with greater complexity some of the topics touched upon in the video series or community missions, sometimes fostering them into exciting new directions, or often just coming up with entirely new stuff altogether. It was suggested that some of what was developed through the collaborative efforts on the back end could help navigate the creative efforts on the front end. With a small handful of exceptions, Zay himself did not frequent the forums, and forum activity rarely bubbled up to the surface of the planned A Show narrative. There appeared to be a notable shift in Zay's perspective and definition of engagement in the time between the establishment and subsequent abandonment of the forums. And so, evidently and understandably, priorities were focused on the metrics of opportunistic and less complex surface engagement afforded through mainline social media such as Facebook or YouTube. This video series was never about Zay Frank himself, or even necessarily about the cult of personality that has arisen around the persona that Zay projects to his fanbase, though that has been discussed at times. More specifically, this video series has been about the people who have been touched or inspired by Zay's unique content, or by the collaborative and creative nature of the Sports Racer Collective, and exploring the ways in which such inspiration manifests in the lives of others. To me, that's kind of the real richness of being part of this Sports Racer community. But conversely, having the platform through which the community could gather to collaborate and create being allowed to fall into such disrepair represents, at least in my mind, a near tragedy of squandered potential. Now, none of this is intended to dismiss the fact that Zay provided the forum as a playground for the Duckies to converge and to create free of charge. Well, certainly an act of generosity that required a significant investment of both time and money that I know myself and many others really appreciate. Zay owes us nothing. And he may not be overly concerned with whether or not his brand has perhaps to some extent become associated with the kind of spam content that currently infests his site. And to be honest, I'm not trying to take the high road and defend his brand against what such an infestation might project. In truth, Zay has the kind of quantified metrics through other mainline social networks to cushion him from most of that. So whether he wants to clean up his own forums or accept the volunteer efforts that have been offered to help him do it, it's really up to him. Several members of the forums tried for months to bring administrative attention to the systemic breakdown of the platform, with one such appeal finally receiving a response from which I quote Zay Frank with the following: "The forum is just a piece of tech. The people are what make it, and they can organize anywhere and make amazing things." Well, Zay is absolutely right. The people that make up the Sports Racer Collective really are and always have been the real magic in the pond. And though nearly all of them have now been kind of disenfranchised from what many, at least in a virtual sense, called home, and have now moved on to other places, I'd like to think that inspiration continues to follow them. The pond, though perhaps diffuse, is just bigger. And so you can expect to see more episodes of this series on the horizon, at least for a little while. Some were shot earlier this past year, and some are yet in the works. Sports racers are out there, and I've had the great opportunity to meet and interact with many of them because of what first was started in the forums. And though I no longer expect to use these videos to point to where in the forums you can find those sports racers, I've continued to connect with some of them through other social media and content creation networks. And you can too. So stay tuned. Maybe even subscribe. There's more episodes on the way. Thanks for watching.